Today we're going back to the Roaring '20s, to Chicago, during a time of prohibition, of women reaching a whole new realm of independence, to people protesting for what they want, to the invention of the Tommy gun, to when Chicago was put on the map and mob bosses like Al Capone and Johnny Torrio ruled the South Side, to when a massacre occurred at 10:30 in the morning and 7 men were gunned down, and still to this day, no one was ever found guilty. This is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Danielle and this is Daniela Diaries. Twice a month here in Daniela Diaries, I cover true crime cases that are basically revolving around the city in which I live. I live in Chicago, I live on the South Side, born and raised. So I try to find all the murder mysteries, true crime series, all the little shockers that come along with living here, and I'd like to share them with you. This case in particular is going back to the Roaring '20s through the years of Prohibition and mafioso and all things syndicate related. So if you guys are big into the whole mob movies, mob lifestyle, if you're fans of Al Capone, Johnny Torrio, or maybe not fans, but you kept up with them, I got a story for you. So if you guys have never heard, or maybe you did and didn't know quite about what everything was about, it's February, it's the month of love. Why wouldn't we talk about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? So buckle up, friends. Let's talk all things mafioso. All right, guys, so we're just gonna jump into it. I think that the thing is with these cases, when it involves the mob and the Chicago syndicate and all the things that the mob just wasn't during the 1920s. The mob lived and reigned for a very long time here in Chicago, and it didn't just happen with Al Capone. The crime didn't just happen when the mob came. It was, if you look back on a lot of things, a lot of gangs, mobs, the mob was essentially like a gang. It was organized crime. That just came along with a lot of poverty. It was, people from the same neighborhood, people from the same upbringing, a lot of immigrants banding together, taking care of their neighborhood, making sure outsiders didn't come in and try to take advantage of the women or the children or, racially profile other people. So it wasn't just the mob came to Chicago and they just tore up everything. So I really want to start that off by saying this. Chicago became a big metropolitan because, everybody was coming in through New York, right? So New York was huge. It had all the, people coming in through there, and it was really overrun. If you guys ever seen Gangs of New York, you've seen how it was. A lot of racially divided things were going on there. So Chicago was the next stop. It was a booming city in the 1800s, right? So a lot of people came here. In the late 1800s, there was millions of immigrants coming to Chicago. Why? Because it was a booming metropolitan. It had they were doing the trains, they were doing a lot of big factories. We had the meatpacking district. There was just a lot of buzz here. So people came here. And another thing people don't talk about is immigration wasn't really enforced here. They weren't checking people's cars. They weren't as strict on it. You came and you came here. So what tend to happen, and it's still very much alive here today, is a lot of these immigrants that came here, they developed their own neighborhoods. So with the Italians, when they came to Chicago, they have a small area called Little Italy, still very well and alive. It's on the south side of Chicago, right outside University of UIC. So it's very much still there. And it's still alive and kicking. It's a really big neighborhood now. And they also had a town, like a little suburb, it was outside of the city, called Cicero. So they kind of kept that. There's a Ukraine village, there's Greek town, there's Chinatown, Pilsen, little village. It's the small, like I said, the immigrants came together and they built a neighborhood. They brought, their country here, and it was safe. It was a safe net for them. So what happened? So in places like Little Italy, a lot of the, kids came here and they took care of their neighborhood. They made sure people didn't come in and mess with anything. If they did, they had their little gangs that took care of it, okay? So Aside from that, which is still, like I said, these areas are still, a lot of them are doing very well, but they're still very much alive and well here today in the 2021. Little Italy, Pilsen, Little Village, Ukraine, all those places are still alive and well. Also, what needs to be said is, much like it is today, all those years ago, politicians were hella crooked. Illinois is known for the crooked politicians, and it was very, very much like that. So basically what happened are these people who were in charge of the brothels, who were in charge of gambling, all the illegal activity, they had politicians in their pockets. And they're like, hey, look, get into office, I'm gonna take care of you, slide you some cash, I'm gonna need you to look the other way. We know this, we know it was happening, but I just wanted to let you guys know it was even happening back then. This wasn't just a thing that happened within recent years, okay? So anyways, let's talk. I think we should start out by saying how the city was divided, okay? So the city was divided with a north and south side. The north side of the city was basically where a lot of the Irish lived. A lot of the Irish settlers lived. They were up there. And the south side of the city, like I said, Little Italy, is where a lot of the Italians are, okay? So we're going to start off by saying that, and each side had a little crew that ran it. So on the north side, they had like a little Irish set, and on the south side, they had the Italians, right? So let's think of that, controlling their neighborhoods and stuff like that, okay? We're going to start off by talking about the mob bosses, all right? The head guy. So in the early probably around 1915, 1920, the big boss here in Chicago, his name was Big Jim Colosimo. He was the big boss, the big guy on top, okay? He had himself a wife, his first wife, and it was said that his first wife was a madam. So he was like a mob boss, so he was really doing gambling, prostitution. He had some small businesses. His wife was, like I said, a madam, so she had all the girls lined up and kind of knew what to do. Big Jim was also very much against any type of alcohol. Did not want to do it. He was okay with prostitutes, but he drew the line at alcohol. I guess, whatever. So Big Jim, he's running the city, him and his wife, they're doing good, they're doing great. There was some small little crews. They were called the Black Hand, and they were kind of like a group of assassins. There were these Italian kids, and they were a group of assassins, and they would just go through and start picking off people. They were killing all these people, and they were kind of a pain in Big Jim's butt, right? So he needed somebody to come here, and he's like, who should I call? His wife had a cousin. It was like a second cousin or a first cousin, not too sure, but a cousin to his wife, and his name was Johnny Torrio. Johnny Torrio was in New York, and he said, look, Johnny, Johnny at this point in New York, he was doing pretty good. He was making a nice name for himself. He was running some illegal activities as well, and he had a gang called the 5 Point Gang. And they seen a lot of promise in Johnny's life, all right? He was a smart guy. He was really good with business. And he said, Johnny, I'm going to need you to come here to Chicago because we're having some problems. And I got these people, and, things are really taking off, and I need a right-hand guy, and I need family here. So what does Johnny do? Johnny says, all right, Big Jim, I'm coming. I'm going to help you out. So Johnny comes into Chicago, and he said, look, my first problem at hand are the Black Hand boys. These guys, they're like hired guns. They're just really creating a lot of problems for me. He said, don't worry, Uncle Jim, I got you. I'm going to take care of it. I feel like I'm like in the mob. We'll make you an offer you can't refuse. But he tells his uncle, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And he said, look, I don't need a lot of smoke around here. He said, don't worry, I got it. So Johnny, being a smart man, he took care of it. He broke up the Black Hand. He made them, sleep with the fishes, and that was it. He carried on. So Big Jim was happy. He's like, all right, cool. Well, throughout this time, Johnny's in Chicago. He's doing good. Something happens. Can you guys imagine? On January 16th, 1919, the 18th Amendment was passed. If you guys aren't familiar with the 18th Amendment, it's prohibition, baby. They said, you guys can't serve alcohol. You can't sell it. I mean, you could drink it, but good luck finding it. But we don't want anybody to have any. And if you guys have learned anything from prohibition, was it made it worse. It made you want what you can't have. So that was it. That's where the mob was like, all right, we got the ladies, we got the gambling, we need the booze. And if you can get the booze to these bars, because you're guaranteed to spend more money gambling, you're drinking, you're going to want to, a couple ladies, if you've been drinking, hey, you're having a bad day and you want to come into their bars and their casinos, I want to have a drink. They knew if they had it, people were going to buy it. Supply and demand, okay? So Johnny's like, hey, Uncle Jim, man, look, there's a lot of money to be made right now. Let's do this. And he said, no, Johnny, we can do the prostitutes, but we can't do the alcohol. I'm totally against it. And he was like, all right. 2 weeks later, I should say, Big Jim's first wife, Johnny Torrio's second cousin or first cousin, she had died. 2 weeks later, after the wife died, Uncle Jim decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get married. So he married some random lady. I don't know who she was. But after he had that conversation with Johnny about the alcohol and not wanting to sell it, 2 weeks after that conversation, so about a month in to be married to his new bride, Big Jim was sitting at his restaurant. He owned some cafes and he was enjoying his morning, and the cafe was shot up and Big Jim unfortunately passed away. So Big Jim passed away, and what happens? The syndicate must go on, right? So being that Johnny was his his right-hand man, he went ahead and became the new boss of the Chicago syndicate. So Johnny Torrio was the new boss, and I'm gonna say this, and I feel like it's I feel like mob stuff is very romanticized, especially in the media. But if I was gonna be a mob boss, I want to be a Johnny Torrio. I know a lot of people see the Al Capones and the Lucky Lucianos and all them, and they think that these are the guys I want to be. If you're going to be a mob boss, you want to be a Johnny Torrio, and I'm going to tell you why. Johnny Torrio was a very smart man. Okay, he knew how to talk to people. He knew how to take enough to be successful, but not to take it all to be greedy and have to always watch your back. I mean, in his business, you always have to watch your back, but he did it in a smart way. I'm going to go ahead and break it down for what Johnny did. So I did tell you that one of the syndicate's big money makers were brothels, were the ladies of the night. And they had noticed that people weren't spending money in the brothels anymore. The girls, I don't know if they were kind of losing their shine or what was the case, and they were losing money, and they're like, what's going on? Johnny's like, all right, let me go in here. Let me see what's going on. He goes into the brothel, and the girls are just kind of like, I guess they're not primped up enough. I don't know, I don't know what he's seen. So he said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to drive a whole new clientele in here. And I mean, I'm not saying this is my favorite part about him. This is actually really disgusting. But he went ahead and said, look, I'm going to need you girls to dress up. I want you to put pigtails in your hair. I want you to wear schoolgirl uniforms. I want you to look very young. And wear, the schoolgirl tie, like the stockings, look like a young girl. And the creepers loved it because business was booming. So he went ahead and took care of that, and it did really well, which is really creepy. And at least, creeps are one of the oldest things in time, but nonetheless, it was good for business. The thing about Johnny Torrio was he didn't just want to stay in the Little Italy area. He really wanted to expand. He said, man, I have the whole South Side, okay? I have this whole area behind me. I really need to expand. I want to be more. I want us to be widespread. I don't want to just be stuck right here, which is genius. So this is what he did. There is always small little gangs, right? There's a little gang here, maybe, 10 or 15 guys. There's a small little gang here, maybe 5 or 10 guys. He said, look, this is no more. He calls them in. He said, this is no more. You guys are going to merge, and you guys are going to be part of this syndicate. We're going to grow, and we're going to expand. And you guys are going to work for me, but I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you guys some businesses. I'm going to give you guys, chances to earn your own money. And with that comes, you're going to give me a little percentage, but I'm also going to offer you my protection. And you're part of the syndicate with me. And they're like, hell yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. All right, so now they don't have as many little tiny, I mean, they weren't the biggest threat, but they were still little pains in the butt. So he cleaned those up. He's like, all right, we're expanding, we're growing. All right. We're going to divide territories because look, I don't need the whole city of Chicago. The Irish on the north side, they're doing good. So he met with the Irish, the head of the Irish mob. His last name was O'Banion. He ran the Irish side it was a mostly Irish mob. They ran the north side. And he said, look, we're gonna develop some territory lines. And he told them, Johnny, they had a nice conversation. They sat down, businessman to businessman. He said, look, I don't need the whole city. Let's make up this territory. Let's divide these lines. You have your spot. We'll have ours. We won't darken yours area. You don't come over to ours, and we can live well. And they shook on it. They said, all right, the territory lines are marked here. Good luck to you in your business ventures. We'll stay out of the south side. You stay out of the north side. And, you know, that's it. And it went swell. It went great. People were prospering. There wasn't fight. I mean, there was probably fighting, you know, because people are people. But nonetheless, it wasn't this crazy thing in which it's going to turn out. He was smart. He made good business moves. He treated everybody with respect. He didn't get greedy. He wasn't loud. And the funny part about Johnny Torrio is despite all his illegal activity, despite being a mob boss, despite running a big syndicate in the city of Chicago, he was home every night at 6 o'clock for dinner with his wife. His wife didn't even know what he did. He didn't drink. He didn't sleep with prostitutes. He didn't ever even carry a gun. Honestly, after Big Jim died and he had to stop being an enforcer, he didn't even carry a gun anymore. He didn't need to. That was it. His life was smooth. He wasn't stupid, so he knew that he needed protection. He needed somebody to watch like their clubs and stuff where they hung out, and he needed somebody to be a guard for him. So who would we call? Remember, Johnny's from New York, and when he was in New York, he ran the 5 Point Gang. He brought a lot of the members here. Some of the other 5 Point Gang members are very popular. One of which was Lucky Luciano, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. And the other one was his very good friend, Al Capone. So when Johnny was here, he gave Al a call and he said, Al, look, we're expanding, we're doing well. I'm gonna need you to come to Chicago. I need you to help me out. Alphonse Capone, better known as Scarface, was born in New York City to 2 Italian immigrant parents. Al was always a little ruffian there. He joined the 5 Point Gang as a teenager, and he was a bouncer and enforcer for the mob and for the gang, and he basically fought his way to the top and grew a very good name for himself. Like I said, he was a bouncer. He actually, one of the most things people do notice about Al Capone would be the scar on his face, hence giving him the name Scarface. He was, like I said, he was a bouncer, and somebody tried to, someone tried to get into a fight, and they pulled out a knife and they ended up slicing up his face. So that's where the Al Capone or Scarface name came from. But yeah, Al was a tough guy, but he was a loyal friend, and he loved Johnny, and he knew that if Johnny was saying things were good and business were good and he was going to run things, he knew that Chicago was where he was going to be. So he packed up and he headed over to the city. So as I stated, Johnny Torrio did inherit all of Big Jim's businesses. You know, like I said, the brothel, the restaurants, the gambling, but he did get into bootlegging. Bootlegging was huge. It was a huge moneymaker, and anybody who was anybody, especially if you had ties and if you were part of like a syndicate or anything like that, you knew that this is where your money was coming from. And they made a lot of money. They said at this time they were making like, I forget what they said. They were making like $60,000 a week in 1920. Like when at the year of the syndicate, the first year of like bootlegging, I think they said they made like $6 million in 1920. So imagine what that would be now. So much money, and we all know if you have the money, you have the power. So remember when I said if I wanted to be a mob boss, I would want to be a mob boss like Johnny Torrio. Because I think sometimes I feel like in a lot of these stories, a lot of these mob stories or these, life stories, and they're kind of doing these things, they overstay their welcome. They don't know when to get out. They get loud. They get flashy. All these things, okay? They don't know when to bow out gracefully. Not my guy, Johnny. So Johnny was walking down the street, and somebody took a shot at him. And he's like, what the hell? They ended up shooting him. They didn't kill him. Thank goodness Johnny survived. But he did get shot in the leg. So that was kind of a shock to him, for someone to be that brazen to take a shot at him, because he was a mob boss, and it wasn't like he lived in a fairyland, but generally speaking there wasn't a lot of issues. Okay, everything with any opposing parties were pretty happy. Everybody was making money. Nobody was messing with anybody's like territory. Things were smooth. So he's like, who the hell would shoot at me? And so after that happened, that kind of took him back, and then he ended up getting hit for actually being a bootlegger. It was called operating an illegal distillery. So he ended up getting locked up and doing 2 years. And remember, Johnny's wife didn't know anything about the life he was living. So this was like a shock. His whole thing was blown. And I think it just took him back, and he said, you know what? He did his time in jail, and he came out and he sat down with Al Capone. And he said, you know what, Al, I'm done with this life. I did what I wanted to do. I made a lot of money, and it's too much. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to hand everything over to you. I need you to go ahead and continue our business, make me proud, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life with my wife. And Al Capone was like, oh, say less, with his scar in his mouth. He was like, yeah, for sure, man. I'm in. I'm your man. The funny thing about Al Capone is he's so notoriously known as such a huge mobster, right? Everybody knows Al Capone. If you think mob, you know, with it, you know, maybe a couple people here and there you might see, you know, like when I think mob, I'll think like John Gotti, I'll think Al Capone, I'll think Lucky Luciano, stuff like that, right? You think about all these big mobsters. The thing is about Al Capone is he didn't even run the city for that long. All the chaos and the big name he made for himself, 4 years. 1925 to 1929, Al Capone ran the Chicago syndicate of the mob, and boy, did he do some stuff. Al Capone was not only very loud, and he loved people, you know, meeting him and seeing him. He loved the media. He was the most visible mob boss, or even like mob member ever, where he's taking pictures, he's meeting baseball players, he's all over the newspapers, he's having interviews, he's meeting politicians, he's on radio shows. He's really trying to pass off the fact that he's not just a mob boss. He's a real businessman, and he wants people to accept him as a real businessman. And he's really just out there. He loved people to notice him. He loved the attention. So while Al Capone's going through, he's a new runner of the Southside Italian mob syndicate. We can't forget about our nice Irishmen on the side, or on the north side, and what's going on with them. So remember, we have the Albanian Irish mob that's running up north. They're real quiet. They're okay with what they got going on up there, right? Now enters George Bugs Moran. Let's not confuse George Bugs Moran with Bugsy, okay? Two different people. So George Bugs Moran was born in Minnesota, and he was born to two French immigrants, and he was, you know, he had a pretty decent life. He went to Catholic school, and around 18 he started getting in trouble, and he dropped out of school, and he started running with like a local gang up in Minnesota. And he ended up getting in trouble for robbing a store, and he was sent away to juvenile hall. And when he got out at 21, he basically took off and headed to Chicago. So when he came to Chicago, he ended up meeting up with Dean O'Banion. Like I said, one of the O'Banion brothers. They did run the north side of the city and the Irish mob. And it was you didn't have to be, unlike the Italians, the Irish, you didn't just have to be Irish. With the Italians, you know, you did have to be Italian and be 100% and have roots in Italy. With the Irish, it was mostly all Irish. It didn't just have to be just Irish, okay? I just want to kind of just put that out there. So this is where our story kind of starts to take place, okay? So Bugs Moran and Al Capone, they hate each other. They hate each other, okay? The reason why they hate each other is because they're very similar. Bugs Moran was basically the right-hand man to the O'Banion gang, okay? So he was who Al Capone was to Johnny Torrio. He was the right-hand guy. And Bugs Moran really thought that they were being kind of gypped by the Italians. And he's like, you know, who are they to tell us this is our line? Who are they to tell us we only get right here? We need more. Look at what all they're doing. They're doing all this. They got all these politicians. This guy's on the TV, blah, 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 you know. And I think we need to go down there. We need to, you know, show them who we are. Show them we're not afraid of these guys. And the O'Banion, the leader, the O'Banion man, he said, you know, we're good. We're good. Leave them alone. And the more, you know, Al Capone was on TV, the more they seen him or heard him on the radio, and he's in the newspapers, and it was just like, it was really like pissing Bugs Moran off. And what really bothered Bugs Moran the most about Al Capone and the syndicate was that they had prostitutes. They were very strict Catholics, I guess, and they were completely against prostitution. Now, you can kill people, you can rob people, you could, you know, whatever, but you cannot have prostitutes. It's funny how there's like a code of honor amongst criminals, you know. But for them, that was like his line in the sand. He's like, man, there is no bigger piece of trash than someone who has prostitutes. Like, I'm done with that guy. Like, he's garbage. We need to go ahead and we need to rise up against him, and we need to go ahead and get some more land, and you know, we need to do more bootleg. We need to start tapping into their trucks. So rumors were spreading that Bugs Moran and the guys from the North Side gang is what they called them, that they were coming down and they were kind of boosting some of the booze off their trucks. They were kind of messing with some of the smaller gangs. You remember I told you the syndicate took all the little smaller street gangs and kind of brought them in, and that the North Side gang was coming down and kind of messing with the younger kids, just kind of stepping, like really breaking that treaty that they had. And for Al Capone, to somebody to just be so brazen to come into his turf, to take his booze, to do these things, he was like, who the hell? Like with a cigar. Like every time I picture Al Capone, it's a cigar, you know? And he's like, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to have to go ahead and take care of this. So Al Capone still had connections in New York. He still had friends in New York. He would invite them down. So remember, Al Capone and Johnny Torrio, they were a part of that 5 Point gang. So it's not, none of these things are like, nothing's linked. Nothing is, you know, it's a supposed thing. But supposedly, some members from the 5 Point gang came in from New York and they killed Dean O'Banion. So they killed the leader of the North Side gang. So in order to avenge Dean O'Banion, Bugs Moran tried to go ahead and kill Johnny Torrio. Even though Johnny Torrio was already out of the game, he felt that it was like an eye for an eye, a leader for a leader. And obviously he didn't succeed, but this like set everything in motion. Now Bugs Moran was really pissing off Al Capone, and now they were at war. So with Dean O'Banion dead, the Northside gang needed a new leader, and that new leader ended up being Bugs Moran. So he rose up through, remember he was the right-hand guy, he rose up through the pack there, and now he is now the leader of the Northside Irish gang. One of the first things that Bugs Moran wanted to do now that he was a new leader of the Northside gang, he had a nice little, it was a nice size, you know, crew that he had. He's like, look, I know it was Al Capone. I know he was something behind it. He's the one. We need to take him out. If we take him out, we're going to go ahead and take back the city. And he got people hype, and they're like, yeah, let's get him. Because basically everybody hated Al Capone. Unless you were like in the mob, like in the mob syndicate, like you didn't, I mean, I'm pretty sure people probably hated him in that too. But for the most part, like everybody that, you know, they just didn't like him. Okay, so everybody was hyped. They're like, yes, let's kill him. Let's take him out. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna avenge O'Banion. We're gonna spread our areas. We're gonna make more money. We're not gonna, you know, have to live underneath their rules, and they're not gonna tell us what to do. So they're like, all right, here's the plan. So this is what they did. And I know this story because I'm gonna tell you a side story once we get through it. So remember I had told you they were in Little Italy in a town called Cicero. Cicero is a small suburb, and it's like across the street from the city. Okay, so it's like about 31st in Cicero. Okay, and it was very much run by the Italians. They have a little race course there, but yeah, nonetheless. So there was a inn called the Hawthorne Inn, which there's still a Hawthorne race course there, but the inn is now gone. It's like a garage, but the Hawthorne race course is still there. And Al Capone was in there with a couple of his guys, and they were sitting down, like having something to eat, having some coffee, and there was a restaurant right next door. So Bugs Moran and the Northside gang came down to Cicero, and they completely lit up the whole like block, the inn and the restaurant next door, and they sprayed over 1,000 bullets with those machines. Also, I should remind you that machine guns had just came out like within the last few years. So these things were like hotcakes, and they were just like, they just 1,000 bullets, okay? And they didn't kill Al Capone, obviously. They missed him. I do know that a little girl was shot when that happened, and she was shot, and I don't know if it was if she got shot in the eye or if she got glass in the eye from being shot, like the window being shot and the glass got it. But nonetheless, she had some eye problems. She had like some issues with her vision. And I know Al Capone paid for her treatment. I know he paid for everybody's treatment that was in that restaurant that day. And the reason why I know this is because about 15 years ago, I did a CNA class, and there was these two little old ladies, and they were from Cicero, and they were like 98 at the time, and they were in the restaurant. And he came in and he took care of everybody, and they told me this story, and they called him Scarface Al. They said they were little girls. So crazy, but the people of the community generally liked him. He took care of the neighborhood. He, gave money to kids. He made sure everybody wasn't, there was no violence. There was no like rapists running the streets. There was no predators. Like if anything like that, they went to him and he took care of it. So generally the people around him liked him. They kept him safe, because people were afraid of him. It was the people who were opponents in business that generally disliked him. So after that failed assassination on Al Capone, Bugs Moran just like, what else am I gonna do? So this is now like Al Capone knows, okay? He knows he shot him. He's like, shit, I gotta figure out what else am I gonna do. So Bugs Moran went ahead and put a bounty on Al Capone's head for $50,000. Al Capone found out, and he was pissed. He was like super duper pissed, and he's like, all right, you want to go to war? I'll take you to war. And that's what they did. It is now February 14th, 1929, and it is Valentine's Day. And here, my friends, is where the massacre shall take place. The night before the actual massacre, so on February 13th, Bugs Moran went ahead and received a phone call at one of his businesses, and they're like, hey, we got a truck full of booze and we're trying to get rid of it. It's coming in from Detroit. You want it? Do you want it? We'll give it to you for a really good price. This stuff's really hot. We need to get rid of it. Can you help us out, or do we have to call somebody else? And he was like, no. Because remember, they're trying to expand. They're trying to make more than what the Italians are making. So he's like, no, I'll take it. And they're like, all right, well, where do you want to meet? He's like, all right, I'll meet you tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning at this garage in Lincoln Park. And it was called the SMC Cartage on, like I said, in Lincoln Park on the north side, North Avenue. Meet me there at 10:30 in the morning. Pull up into that garage, and we'll meet you there. And they're like, all right, we'll see you there. And he's like, all right, done deal. So here comes the next morning, 10:30 in the morning. The truck arrives, and Bugs Moran was running. He wasn't there yet, but his men were there. He had 7 men that were there, and they seen the truck roll in. It's 10:30 in the morning. People are working. People are walking. It's life. He chose the place, so they weren't worried. They're walking up to the garage, and, they're going to, like, check out the merchandise, right? So they're walking into the garage, and right behind them, two police officers walk in behind the garage, and they are into the garage where they have the illegal alcohol, and the police say, hey, this is a raid. Everybody turn around, put your hands on the wall, put your hands up. And everybody does it because they're like, we got caught. Cops are here, damn it. And as soon as they put their hands on the wall, guns are blazing. They gunned them all down. They killed all 7 of the men. So through this, remember I told you Bugs Moran was running late. He was just walking up into the parking garage. He was about to walk into the parking garage when he seen the police walking up. So he was like, damn, they got caught. I'm just gonna wait right here, and then once they get locked up, I'll go and get them out of jail or whatever. But as he was waiting there, he heard the sound of the guns. He seen the cops come out. They jumped into like a little black Cadillac that I guess at this time is what the police drove, and they took off. So about 4 or 5 minutes later, the real police come, and they come in, and one of the men he wasn't dead on sight. The other 6 were dead, but one man was like the #1 assassin for the Northside Gang. Bugs Moran had heard him tell the cops. The cops like, who shot you? Who shot you? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't get shot. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's like a code of conduct, amongst people in that life where, the worst thing the lowest thing you could ever be is a rat. So they didn't say anything. Their lips were sealed, okay? So he even said on his deathbed, I don't know, I didn't get shot. I don't know who shot me. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, loyalty. Like, lips were sealed. That was impressive. But all 7 of the men did die. I'm going to go ahead and place their picture right here so you guys can check them out. So you would think that the first person that they are going to suspect did this was obviously Al Capone. They couldn't pin it to him because Al Capone was in Florida when this happened. He made sure that he wasn't there, so he couldn't be blamed, you know, and they weren't going to blame the police and think that the police did it. I think people knew that it was Al Capone and he set it up, but there was no proof. There's a difference. It's not about the truth all the time, it's about the proof, and they had no proof. So the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, not only did 7 people were violently murdered in the middle of the day, people impersonated police, like it was a crazy crime, went unsolved. Al Capone was never held for it. He was never questioned for it. And those 7 murders went unsolved. Cold case closed, never solved again. And that's it. No, I'm just joking. We'll keep going. So I did tell you that Capone and Moran, they had like this conflict thing and they hated each other. They thought one was better than the other, you know, so on and so on. And I do want to tell you that I guess in Capone's own way, he did win. He won because by killing those guys, those 7 men, the Northside Gang wasn't that big, and they really needed strong people to carry on and really try to overrun the syndicate. And with his 7 strongest men, his shooters, his assassins, being dead, Moran lost the control of the Northside Gang. He lost his people, and he lost the fear to run people. So he lost everything. And from what I know, somebody else came in and taken over. But Bugs Moran was basically done for. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was huge. It was all over the news. People were addressing the president and saying, like, you need to come down here. This is crazy. There's just so much violence and mob activity. You know, they wanted the feds to come in. They're like, what is going on? So Al Capone, just by doing that St. Valentine's Day Massacre, even though he wasn't, he was never had charges pressed against him and stuff like that, and he was not there, it brought a lot of heat on him, and the feds started to watch him big time. So about a month after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Al Capone was arrested for failure to appear at court. They had wanted him some questioning, and he did not want to go ahead and follow through with the subpoena, so he never showed up. So he had a warrant for that arrest, and then he ended up going to Philadelphia, and he was arrested there again because he had a concealed weapon, him and his bodyguard, and he was not supposed to have it. So Al Capone ended up getting in trouble for the subpoena and for the concealed weapon, and he ended up doing, I think, about 9 months. He was sentenced to 2 years, but he got out for 9 months for good behavior. And 9 months to somebody like that, it was easy time, you know. He's like, pfft. But the thing is he was 9 months off the street, and the feds had 9 months to build a really strong case on him. He couldn't do anything, he couldn't move anything, and they had all the time to dig into everything, and he couldn't, you know, hide what he needed to hide. So by the time he had come out of jail, the feds were already super into him, and a lot of the time with these, especially back then, they really couldn't pick, they didn't have like the RICO Act, okay, for organized crime, so they couldn't kind of come in and swoop down on everybody. So a lot of times what they ended up getting these people on, these like mob bosses and stuff, was tax evasion, because they could prove that they were making this money, so they had to like pay taxes, and they weren't paying taxes on this extra money. So Al Capone ended up getting busted for tax evasion, and he got sentenced to, I think it was 13 years. So October 1931, Al Capone was sentenced to 11 years for tax evasion. And let me tell you something, usually when it's like a federal crime like that, you go to like Club Fed, right? You go to like the federal prison, and it's like low key. Not for him. He said he served some time in Cook County Jail, then they moved him to Atlanta, and then they moved him to Alcatraz, which is like crazy. That's a crazy hard time for somebody who's in jail for a non-violent offense. Unfortunately for Al Capone, things just kind of continued to spiral. While incarcerated, they did find out that Al Capone was indeed infected with syphilis, probably from the ladies of the night that he was frequenting. And unfortunately for Al Capone, when they did catch it, it was already so advanced that there was no cure for it. And if you know anything about syphilis, it's an STD, and it's really, really bad. And it ended up, it messes with like your cognitive abilities. So by the time Al Capone did get out of jail, in 1939, it is said that he had the cognitive delayment of a 12-year-old, that he needed like a sitter. He needed somebody to like take care of him, to make sure he was going to the bathroom, to make sure he was cleaning himself. Like, he was severely impaired. So he ended up just retiring, because, you know, he couldn't continue his life like that. And he retired to Florida, where he eventually did pass. He passed away at 48 years old in 1947. It's funny that he was, Bugs Moran really was like, the prostitutes are gonna kill you, and sure shit they did, you know. The Chicago Syndicate did live on for a very, very long time, and they followed underneath a lot of Al Capone and Johnny Torrio's disciples. Some of the people were like Frank Needy, Paul Rica, Tony Accardo, and Sam Giancana. I might be saying their names wrong, but they carried on the Chicago Syndicate, and, you know, I don't know if they're still alive, and we're just gonna say good for you guys, because no, I don't need anybody knocking on my doors. Bugs Moran did lose everything, which is really sad. At one time, he was very, very wealthy, very powerful man. And when he lost the Northside Gang, he lost all of his wealth. He did try many times to regain the wealth, regain the control. He tried to do some like check writing schemes, some petty thefts. He tried to rob a bank, and all he really did was, he never got the success or the power back, but he did end up getting himself a nice 15 years in prison. Unfortunately for Bugs Moran, he did pass away in prison at the age of 63 in 1957 of lung cancer. And last but not least, we're going to talk about my guy Johnny Torrio. So Johnny Torrio, he retired for Italy for a few years, and then he came back, and he was kind of a mentor and kind of somebody to give advice to some of the mob bosses and the syndicate members. But that's all he ever did. They came, they asked him for advice, you know, respect. And that's as far as his relationship and his involvement with the syndicate went on after all those many years. He moved to Brooklyn, he lived there with his wife, and he just kind of kept it quiet. On April 16th, 1957, Johnny Torrio went ahead and took himself for a walk and went to the barber shop to go ahead and get a nice haircut and get faded up for the week. And while he was sitting there waiting for his hair to be cut, Johnny did have a massive heart attack. He was able to make it to a local hospital, but he soon died several hours later. But being true Johnny Torrio fashion, and just being low-key and never saying anything and just staying below the action, the media never even found out he was dead until 3 weeks later. So even then, even in true death, my guy Johnny was slicker than them all. And this, my friends, is the unsolved murder and crime of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit different, and the thing is especially with organized crime, oh gosh, it's so much information, and I can go on for hours because there's so many people, there's so many big hitters involved, and you can't really mention one while kind of telling his story. So I'm hoping that I kind of addressed everything to kind of bring in the whole picture and to kind of just stay on the Chicago Syndicate and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Like I said, we can go on for hours and hours. There's movies, there's everything. I've watched them all. My dad, Leo, everybody, my family, you know. I think when you're from Chicago, like, everybody knows the story of Al Capone and Johnny Torrio and the O'Banion brothers, and so we all knew this stuff. But I was really hoping to share it with you, and I thought it was kind of appropriate since it is February 1st and it's, you know, Valentine's Day. My thought on everything. I think when I say that Johnny Torrio, if I was going to be a mob boss, Johnny Torrio was my favorite. I think the thing about mob, they're so romanticized, and people always kind of root for the bad guy, you know. If you watch like The Bronx Tale, you always, like, I rooted for Sonny because I love Sonny, you know, who didn't love Vito Corleone and Michael Corleone, you know. I think it's because you see them and they're well spoken and they're well dressed and they have this power and this confidence to where they don't look like a thug. But if you really think about it, they really were. They weren't good guys. You know, they did bad things, and, you know, did they always do them to women? No, but they had brothels. I mean, I'm sure those weren't the, you know, though they weren't treated the best, you know, so I don't know. What are your guys' opinion on it? Al Capone, I think he was a maniac. You know, I think he was a maniac, and I think he was a narcissist, and he, you know, he did what a lot of people did. You know, he did what a lot of people do. He just got too big for his britches, and he let his ego and his pride get the best of him, and it killed him. Both ways. So, you know, that's just kind of my thought on the whole Al Capone thing. But I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys think. Like I said, Johnny Torrio was kind of, you know, I liked him because he did bad things, but he wasn't a bad person. I don't know. Here I am romanticizing him. But I said, if I was going to be a mob boss, I would have been Johnny. But I don't know. You know, maybe not. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Are you guys into it? I hope you guys are enjoying the series. If you guys are new, I do these true crime series twice a month. And again, everything is kind of related to Chicago. So, hopefully you guys like it. Our next episode will be Monday, February 15th, and that will be on the lipstick killer, just in time or just after Valentine's Day. And it's a good one. It's a really good one. And this one is like, you guys are going to love it. So, be sure, set your alarms, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I hope you guys love it. Please, if you guys can, share these videos, I make a playlist and leave everything down below so you guys can check it out, and I would love for you guys to share it with all your friends and family and anybody who loves true crime. So I will see you guys on the next one. Please don't forget to subscribe, and be safe out there, my friends, and like, you know, make good choices and do good things and all that stuff. Right, guys? All right, I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, friends.